Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt.
With me today is abundance teacher and money coach, Jodie Lynn.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. And forgive me for the slow catch up there because my browser decided to take a snooze there for a moment, and I wasn't sure I was going to get it back. But it looks like it's back, so that's the good news. All right, so welcome to another episode, and we're being joined today by somebody who loves positivity, loves the law of attraction. We don't get a lot of actual law of attraction guests, Jodie Lynn. I mean, we talk about it, periodically. It becomes part of the conversation. But when was the last time we had a law of attraction guest?
Can't even tell you.
I'm not even sure. Yeah, it's been a while. So I guess we're overdue. Is what it means.
I manifested this episode, so that's what
happened. Okay. Well, that explains everything. So,
right.
Matt O'Neill, welcome to the program. You are the host of the Good News Podcast. I like the name, by the way.
Yeah, the Good Mood Revolution Podcast.
Good Mood. Right. Oh, excuse me, Good Mood Revolution Podcast. I left the key word out. I apologize. But tell us about how that got started.
Yeah, so it got started because of a bunch of bad moods.
Yeah, that's how it usually happens, right?
They always say that our pain becomes our purpose, and it's so true. And thankfully, I had a series of wake-up calls that I listened to. So when I was in my 20s, I was really angry and resentful, and I was smoking pot every day, drinking heavily, probably daily, using other drugs. I mean, it was dark times. I mean, I was partying too, and enjoying some friendships and skiing. I was in Colorado, and I would wake up in the middle of the night, like wake up and then not know where I was. And it wasn't because of the drugs. It was just like, these were literal wake up calls. And it happened pretty frequently. And I would get really freaked out because I didn't know where I was. Well, one day I finally was like, well, maybe that means I'm in the wrong place. And so I went to the mountains, which I think are really sacred and powerful. And I sat there and I said, well, what should I do? What should I do next? And I just got some messages to get into real estate and to go to the beach. So I put money down on a place in Pacific Beach, California with a buddy. And I was going to go hang out in San Diego. And then I got a call from my cousin who was in Charleston. And she said, hey, why don't you come to Charleston? And I said, well, I already, put $1,000 down on this apartment, but I'll fly out to Charleston. And so I flew out to Charleston, and as soon as my feet hit the ground, I had a rush of a knowing that this was everything. It was where I was going to meet my wife. It was just my whole future was just right there with the first footsteps on the soil. And so I called my buddy on the trip and I said, dude, I can't go to California. You can have the $1,000. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to put you out with this. And he's like, oh, no problem. My brother will move in with me. He wanted to move in anyway.
Cool.
And I moved to Charleston, South Carolina, left the drugs behind, was still drinking, but was trying to clean up my act. And I ended up getting the movie The Secret. So I was 25 years old, and my cousin says, you need to see this movie. And I watched The Secret, and my mind was just blown. Everything made sense. I'm like, wow, all the negative stuff in my life has been because of me. This, no way. And I was like, and then I said, so if I want to just have an amazing life, all I need to do is just change the way I'm thinking. And my cousin's like, yeah, she was really into Abraham Hicks.
Okay.
And I never really got into Abraham or Esther Hicks, I think. Abraham. I didn't study it. She was really, really deep into it. Once I got into The Secret, I was like, this is it. And so I got into a whole host of self-development, and it became my obsession to make sure that my thoughts were not negative, because I'm like, oh, I don't want to attract these negative things to my life. And that my thoughts were super positive because I wanted super positive things. Of course, now it's like 2 decades later, and my thoughts on all of this have evolved so much since that moment, but that was really the start of it.
It's amazing and interesting how there are so many parallels between the stories that people tell about how they latched on to the whole law of attraction concept. It almost always involves seeing The Secret. It was true in my case as well. Was it in yours, Jodie Lynn? I can't remember. Was that part of yours?
I don't think that was the first thing. No.
No. Okay.
But I definitely watched it.
Yeah. What a movie.
Yeah.
What a movie, right? Like life-changing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, to be perfectly honest, it was confusing for me.
Okay. Tell me.
I mean, I understood what they were saying. I just didn't believe it. But it also resonated on a certain level. And that's what was so confusing about it. On the one hand, my brain was saying, yeah, right. And on the other hand, my gut was saying, ooh, yeah, right. And the two just didn't mesh. I couldn't make sense out of it. That actually became the reason why I started this podcast, because I needed to make sense out of it.
Yeah. And so that's the good mood revolution, right? So how I started to evolve on this was, I was like, okay, well, at first I was just trying to control my thoughts, right? Like positive thoughts. Think about what I want. Don't think about what I don't want. Make sure that my speech is always in alignment with what I want and not what I don't want. And so like self-deprecating humor became something I just didn't engage in any longer. I would catch people saying things that I could hear. Obviously they were like creating negative futures for themselves by putting themselves down or saying they couldn't do something. And I was just very careful with the words that came out of my mouth about how it was going to attract what I wanted. I created vision boards and they all came true, just like The Secret, like the exact house, the kids. So we had 3 daughters and I'm like, shoot, I'm going to make a vision board and put a son, right? A boy on this board. And I'm like, of course I would love to have 4 daughters, but I'm like, let's just see how far we can take the law of attraction. So I painted the bedroom blue, and I put blue tile like in the bathroom and navy blue cabinets, right? And I had a baby boy, and we had 3 girls, so we knew we were really good at having girls. Odds were like, hey, you guys, you're probably gonna have a 4th girl, and we've got a baby boy. And so was it all the energy I was putting out there? Is it just the odds of a coin flip? I don't know. We got a baby boy after I did all that.
Probably a good thing too, since you did all that redecorating. I mean,
yeah.
My wife's like, what if this is a girl? I'm like, well, paint. I could put new tile, like paint and tile is easy, but I'm just going to see how far we can take this manifestation thing.
That's funny. I love it. It's interesting also the things that people have chosen, and it's a wide range of things that people choose to try to manifest, to attract into their lives. I think that's the first time I've ever heard somebody try to attract the gender of a baby. I mean, I'm sure it's happened before, but I can't remember a story like that.
Yeah. So in The Secret, Rhonda Byrne is like, oh, if you want to meet the woman of your life or the man of your life, then just write about who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did. And then I met my wife 3 months after I wrote that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Did you do what I don't remember what the one guy's name was, but the guy who was the Hollywood guy, the cinematographer, or what he was, and he painted his ideal mate.
I didn't. No, I just wrote it and I put it in a book in my nightstand, and I started to sleep on one side of the bed, like all the stuff, like making room for her, and right, and it was 3 months. 3 months later, and that was also one of those and I was going on dates, so it's not like this was the first date I had in 3 months, but on this particular date, I'm sitting next to her at this bar that we met at, and I get another knowing, just like I had when I went to Charleston, and it was like a out of mind experience where I was like, I knew I was going to know everything about this woman, and then now we have 4 children, and I still don't know everything about her, but I'm excited. I'm excited to learn.
Well, there's time, you know.
Yeah.
We have time. Now my new vision board, at the top of it is my overarching life goal, and it's to ridiculously happy older people, this older couple celebrating their 60th wedding anniversary. So that is now the guiding roadmap for my vision boards.
Okay. Very cool.
That's cool.
So this is an interesting, I mean, we haven't talked law of attraction in a while, and I'm thinking about all the different favorite topics that are tied to it. One of the big pieces that comes up a lot around here is the action piece. And it's a point of debate. The question is, to what degree, if any, do you believe that action plays a key role in what you manifest?
Massive. Action is so massive.
Mm-hmm.
And so at the same time that I saw The Secret, I read the book Think and Grow Rich.
At the same time. Ooh, okay.
And within a few months of each other, right?
Yeah.
And in Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill, to me, it's one of the best books ever written. He is alluding to this magic formula that will give you anything you want.
Mm-hmm.
He never spells it out. He wants you to figure it out throughout the book. And so, I'll spell it out because I've read the book numerous times. And it's a 3-step formula. The first step is you have to create a very clear picture of what you want. So that's the secret, right? Very clear, definite picture of what you want. So vision boards, goals. For me, I manifest by rewriting the same goal every day until I achieve it. And I think there's something really powerful about taking an idea from your mind and then turning it into something physical that you see. Mm-hmm. I think it's I just think that's a really powerful way of going about it. Now, Tony Robbins says you should scream it out loud in the shower at the top of your lungs and get it into the vibration of your body. It's not as much my style, but I think taking action, just writing the goal every day I think it adds a lot to manifestation. So that's creating a clear picture. But the step I'm talking about, step 2, is cultivate a burning desire for achieving it. Mm-hmm. And to cultivate a burning desire. So you can do this in many ways, but if you don't have a burning desire for it, it probably won't manifest.
Let's talk about what a burning desire is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like an obsession. The more obsessed you are with what you want, the more likely it's going to happen. So it would be like if you wanted a sun, painting the bedroom blue and putting in blue tile.
You mean you've actually done something like that? No.
Yeah. Wild.
And so I'm full in. I'm obviously you guys can tell I'm full in on the law of attraction, but I've just watched the magic over and over and over to the point where it's not even magic. It's just oh, this is how the world works.
Yes.
So a burning desire, how do you fan the flame of your burning desire? Again, I think with repetition. So visualization, if you have a visualization practice, that can be a repetition of visualizing the outcome. That's why vision boards I think are really powerful. Rewriting it every day. Well, the third step that The Secret omits, the third step to Napoleon Hill's equation, is take massive action and don't stop until it's yours. And he said, if you just do those 3 things, anything you want, absolutely anything you want is yours.
By the way, I always like to throw in a little footnote, which is, to be fair, The Secret actually does talk about the action piece. It doesn't get a major emphasis, but it is actually in there. So I thought I'd throw that in there. But it's also
I have no complaints, man. I love The Secret. I have no complaints. I've heard that thing too, oh, you can't just sit there in a lotus position and wait for checks. Try. Give it a shot.
I personally don't even recommend it because you're basically burning life.
Yeah.
Why not actually live instead of sitting on the couch trying to manifest something?
Oh, that's a powerful point. Yeah. while you're sitting there being sedentary, what you're just missing, like the most important currency, the money, the things we attract, all this stuff is meaningless. It really means nothing.
And quite honestly, it's boring. I mean,
The-
really, sitting on the couch, just sitting there, I can't think of anything that would just melt my brain faster.
Uh,
I'm so
Well,
glad.
maybe if I sat on the couch and watched the television, watching this mindless program, that might melt it a little bit faster. But other than that, I mean, it's just, yeah.
Well, but so here's the interesting thing about that. You sit on the couch and you watch TV. What do you watch?
Not a whole lot.
So typically, it's again, going into the law of attraction, typically if you look at the most popular shows, anxiety
Oh, yeah.
inducing,
Oh, yeah.
revenge seeking, hatred creation, these shows, they're like, I'm going to murder somebody and then be riddled with anxiety about where to hide the body so I don't get caught. That is like the storyline of every major drama that is a massive success. And so what is that attracting? If we're putting those emotional signatures
it's not
into
anything I
our
want to live.
no.
So I'm very careful about what I watch, like extremely careful about what I watch. It's not really our thoughts that attract, it's our emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Our emotions are so much more powerful. And the thoughts show up to like tell us what the emotions, it's like to justify, like if we feel really, really afraid, the thoughts will show up about all the things we're afraid about. But the emotion was what created all the thoughts in the first place. So I don't want to watch things that create fear and anxiety, because then I'll have a bunch of fearful and anxious thoughts, and who knows what I'm going to manifest. Definitely things to be afraid about. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing. We are creatures of focus. It's not like we can turn the focus off. I'm going to stop focusing. It doesn't work that way.
I'm going to zone out.
There's always something to focus on. And no matter if you're conscious, if you're aware, if you're breathing and pushing air in and out, I guarantee you're focused on something.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter what you're doing. You're focused on something, and trying to focus on nothing. I mean, there are gurus who have tried to do that for years. They finally came down from the mountain and said, "Forget this. Let's actually do some living," because because it's just you can't do it. You can limit your focus. You can focus on your breathing. You can say, focus on a particular sound or whatever, but you're still focusing. You can't turn the damn thing off. So. As long as that's the case, why not be selective about it?
Totally.
To me, that was the big lesson. Learning I could actually be selective. I thought I was actually subject to whatever came into my sensory range,
including our thoughts.
Oh yeah, everything. Yeah,
and our emotions. Yeah. And that's kind of how I thought about these thoughts and these emotions too. Was that they were like storm clouds, and that they would come in, and I just had to wait the storm out until it passed. And I'm like, well, I feel pretty crappy now, so hopefully tomorrow it'll be better.
Mm-hmm.
But what you just said is the key, is that, well, no, actually, if I just don't attach to these thoughts, I don't let my focus move in and then get me caught up in that storm, I can't avoid it. In fact, I could probably put my focus in other places like gratitude, and start to focus on things I'm grateful for, or into learning and growth, and try to focus on how I'm growing and learning from the situation. And the whole thing could go from a dark storm to a sunny day without the situation changing at all.
Yeah, we've never experienced that, have we, Jodie Lynn?
Never.
No.
But I think that there's something that I always like to touch on with this part of the conversation, because there was two Jodies that have lived, this many years on this planet. The one side of Jodie was, so invested in the law of attraction that it was exactly or similar to what you were saying, Matt, of like, just choose to think about it differently. But what I did that was really unhealthy for me was, I'm just going to choose to put that into a box and put that into a really dark cave within myself. And I won't feel that. I'm just going to be positive, like this is good, and this is good, and this is good. And it was almost this artificial emotion. And eventually I would feel good and the storm cloud would pass. But I would think I was doing myself a disservice. So I think there is a key to also feeling the feelings, allowing them without attachment, like you said, Matt, to move through you and out of you so that you're not holding them in some dark compartment. But I would love your thoughts on that.
Yeah, Jodie Lynn, I was 25 when I learned of the law of attraction.
Mm-hmm.
When I was mid 30s, so by 35, I had chronic back pain to the point where I couldn't walk. And I'm like hobbling into a spine surgeon office. And I look at him with desperation and I say, cut me. Cut me. Do whatever you can. This pain is unbearable. And he takes the MRI and he looks at the results and he's like, yeah, there's some disc degeneration here, but really not a whole lot that I see that wouldn't be normal. And I'm like, well, what should I do? And he said, I think you need to see a physical therapist. So I go to see this physical therapist, and law of attraction, I don't know. She ends up being this like world-class energy healer. This is where it gets really wild. She actually speaks telepathically to her patients, and it's it's amazing to experience. She's doing hand signals. My eyes are closed or they can be open. It doesn't matter. And she's pushing on my arm doing muscle testing, right?
Mm-hmm.
My arm will all of a sudden go strong. So she makes a signal with her hand and has a thought about something, and my arm goes strong and says yes. So with her mind, she's asking what's going on. Well, what she was doing is she's scanning my body for what emotions were trapped. And they inevitably, it would stop at my liver. And the emotion that gets trapped in the liver is anger. And over and over and over, she was then praying, using prayer to help me release anger that I had, just like, oh, I'm not going to feel this anger right now. So I'll just put it in this dark box. And where's that box? It's located in my liver.
Wait a minute, I just heard this story. Didn't I hear this story a moment ago? I'm sure I did.
Did you guys talk about this?
Somebody just said it.
And so, and then I ended up getting this, there's a documentary on Amazon Prime called All the Rage, Saved by Sarno. And there's a guy named Dr. Sarno who wrote a book, Healing Back Pain. And he said he was a surgeon, and he would give people spine fusion surgeries. And he found out their back would just get hurt again. So the surgery wasn't fixing anybody. And he finally figured out 90% of back problems are unexpressed anger.
Which makes sense.
So his answer to healing back pain was to figure out how to get the unexpressed anger out of your energy system. And so I had this energy healer. She was freaking amazing. I still see her every couple of months. And it was crazy. I know all of this stuff. So I just saw her a couple of weeks ago, and I was having some leg pain, and so she's like doing her thing and asking what's going on. And then as soon as I hear my stomach gurgle, and she gets to this, and I'm like, oh, my stomach knew before you even asked the question. And she's like, I know, it's pretty wild, right? And I had over sympathy trapped in my stomach for my dad. And I'm like, well, what's over sympathy? And she said, it's feeling sorry for somebody. And, so that's not a powerful emotion. But why do we take like over sympathy or anger, and it's like in less than a second, we'll just store it into these compartments in our energy system, and it creates a tremendous amount of havoc. I think it's probably the source of most disease.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to agree with you.
But I think we live, the why is we live in a place where we're not taught how to feel these things, or that you're allowed to feel these things, or how to productively feel these things.
Or even what
All of that.
productive is. Well, I mean,
Yeah,
when was the last
exactly.
time you heard
Like,
anyone define what productively feeling something is?
exactly. Like, I grew up in a rodeo family, and it was like, cowboy up, you don't cry. And it's not that my dad ever said that, because he was actively trying not to say those things. He told me stories about like my brother at funerals, and not like it's okay to cry, and he would say that to my brother. But he never said that to me, being the girl. And I definitely internalized that as like, my brother is very, very emotional, or used to be when we were kids. A lot of things happened in our lives. And I would look at it, and I would look at my brother and see he's fallen apart. And I can see my dad isn't falling apart. He's being strong, and he's being a rock. Like, he can't be the only one. So I need to be the other rock, because my mom was also emotionally like all over the place. So I had determined at a very young age, I must be the rock.
Isn't
And
it
I would
crazy?
cry alone.
Isn't it crazy as a child that we can make these distinctions about who we're going to be?
Yeah.
And then when we grow into adults, we don't know that these decisions that we made when we were 5 years old, a 5-year-old mind made a decision that is now running our life.
Absolutely.
Like, we need to find these decisions like you did and say, well, maybe that was actually a useful decision at the time. It may have helped me get through some tough stuff, but is it serving me now? And, the answer is
No.
to that thing where you were like, I shouldn't feel sad emotions. I shouldn't cry. That is not serving, right? That's actually walling up our heart, because if we can't feel this, our heart sing a sad song, we can't fully feel it sing a happy song.
That's
because
right.
we're just numbing all the feeling. So how did you get through it, Jodie Lynn?
Oh my gosh. One of the most memorable things that I did, because I would hold everybody at an arm's length in terms of love and showing emotion and being weak and all of those things, was I began to cultivate a safe space for myself, a safe, like a safe network. And I think one of the most profound things that I did was work on my relationship with my dad. And like, it's funny because my dad and I have always been like best friends. He's always treated me like an adult. He's the one that taught me about personal development and law of attraction. He's probably the first person that told me about The Secret, but I probably don't remember it that way, because I thought he developed all of these things. Because I was like 8 when he told me. So like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I was like, my dad built that. And then I found out later in life that wasn't true. So it probably was one of the first things that I heard of. I just thought my dad built it. So he would teach me all of these things, and we've been really, really good friends, had this beautiful relationship. But I needed to change the way that my perspective was. And I knew that my perspective wasn't that I couldn't, or was that I wasn't allowed to be weak, or that feeling emotion was weakness, and all of these other things. So I literally said, Dad, I need to have a conversation with you. That like some things that are on my heart, like, let me know when you have time. And he was like, how about right now? And I'm like, shit, I'm not ready for this. Okay, great. And so like I got on the phone with him, and he's like, what are you thinking? And I was like, well, there's just some things that are bothering me, and I know that these are my perspectives, but I can't stop seeing them, and I need your help, and I need certain things to help shift these perspectives, because I know that it's not absolute truth. It's just the way that I have perceived things. And he's like, all right, cool. Like, hit me. What is it? And I said, what do you want me to do for you? And I said, all that I want from you is to say, I love you. And he's like, what? Because he used to, I would be like, I love you. And he'd be like, yeah, me too. And he does that with everybody. But for me, that when he would say, yeah, me too, it would be like this like arrow or dagger in the heart. Like, oh, I just want to hear those words so badly. And he had no idea until I said it in that moment that it impacted me so greatly. So from that day on to like today, he says, every time I say I love you, he says, I love you more. Yeah.
I do that with my 8-year-old.
It's so beautiful. And it was the smallest thing, but giving myself permission was really the thing. Permission to ask for what I needed, to even explore what it is that I needed, and then ask for those things. And the permission to like lean on other people, which, you know, I'm not great at all the time, but I work on it.
Yeah. So I resonate a lot with your story. And I was told directly, like, boys don't cry.
Ah,
Men don't cry. Like, buck up.
that's the thing, right?
And then I prided myself, you know, in my teens and in 20s, you know, here I am like abusing my body with all these drugs and alcohol and all that stuff. But at least I'm not a crier, right?
Yeah, not a baby. Right?
So
Yeah.
I'm trying to express myself in different ways by self-destructing, but I wasn't crying. So that was a positive, and I was being manly about it. And I still work on being vulnerable and being, so, you know, I still feel like the one who needs to be taking care of everybody, and the one that needs to be like the responsible one, the one that holds it all together, like you were describing. And yeah, and it's not a situation where I cry often. I do my best to lean into the sad emotions, and you know, I take that back. I've evolved a tremendous amount. So I was telling you guys about my son. Katie had 3 miscarriages before his birth, and they were all heartbreaking. The last, we had gotten a positive heartbeat, but we were just like super careful. We weren't going to tell anyone. We weren't going to tell our kids. We'd gotten so excited when she had gotten pregnant the other 2 times. We told everybody, and then you know, trying to describe to our kids that they weren't going to have a sibling was pretty heartbreaking. Well, then on the last one, the last miscarriage, we get a positive heartbeat, and our doctor's like celebrating. She's like, there's a 98% chance that you're having a healthy baby at this point. And so we went on a camping trip, and my daughter made a wish on a star that night. And she said, I wish that mommy would have a baby in her belly. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a sign, right? So I'm like, your wish came true. We all celebrate and we hug. And then the next doctor visit was just devastating. So you know, we went to go see a fertility expert months later after we recovered. And, you know, and this was probably a lot harder on Katie than it was on me. And we're like, hey, we just don't want to go through another one of these heartbreaks. Can you help us have a higher chance of a successful baby? And you know, this is why I say I didn't care if it was, I truly didn't care if it was a boy or a girl. We wanted a healthy baby. We just wanted 4 children. And we knew that was where our hearts were for our family to be complete. And even like I said, I could repaint it was all just a game to me. What can we manifest a boy? But truly, at this point, you know, especially, we were just like, healthy baby. That's all we're praying for. Well, at the fertility clinic, they do an ultrasound, and they're like, well, we can't start fertility treatments because Katie's pregnant. We're like, oh no. Like, we weren't excited at all. And so every single trip to the doctor's office, holding our breath. And you know, and there were some complications too, and he wasn't growing right, and he was like a lot smaller than he was supposed to be. And they bring us in, they're like, he's not growing right. We're really concerned. And it turns out Katie was just trying to take care of 3 kids and me. So she's taking care of a big kid and 3 other kids, and she wasn't eating enough. And so they're like, eat. And so she started to eat, and then he started to grow. Well, finally, we get to the delivery day. And at this point, we're like, we did it. You know, we made it. No miscarriages. And we'd already had 3 successful deliveries. And so we didn't think anything wrong could possibly happen. And we're cracking jokes with the nurses. And I'm like, Katie, you want to read your novel? Like we're just looking at this like a vacation day. We don't have kids to take care of. And and then something funny starts happening on the heart rate monitor. And the nurses come in, and then they're like moving her in all these different positions. And then all of a sudden, like, doctors come in, and then more people come in. And then the next thing I know, they unplug all the wires and they start running down the hall. And when I get into the room, I had to put these scrubs on. They didn't have time to numb her, so they just had to cut and extract this baby that wasn't breathing. And they extract his white, limp body. And Katie starts screaming, "Is my baby okay?" And nobody says a word. And at that moment, like, just despair, just massive despair. After everything we had gone through to try to get this baby to be here, I'm like, I don't know how we're going to recover from this.
Mm-hmm.
And then the doctor put a little mask on his face, and they pump some air, and he lets out the faintest little cry. And the whole place erupts in this celebration, and everybody's like hooting and hollering. And like, the doctors saved his life. The nurses saved his life. If they had been 30 seconds longer, a minute longer, I don't know. He wasn't breathing for a long time, and they saved his life. But that day, like, broke my heart open. And since that moment, I have been so much more in touch with my vulnerabilities, because I recognized that day that I wasn't in control at all. There's nothing I could do. It was totally beyond my control. So, now we talk about the law of attraction. Like, did we attract this traumatic delivery to us? Did we attract the miscarriages with our thinking? And I think this is where we can take the law of attraction too far. I'm a full believer in God. And I think some experiences are just experiences that are beyond our understanding, that we had nothing to do with. There's 7 billion people. There's 13 billion years of existence. There's a lot of different variables going on other than us just manifesting our life. And I think some things are just bigger than us. And so that was a day that I kind of started to feel more,
Wow. It's a powerful story.
Yes. Powerful.
It was powerful to live through. Now we got this healthy, beautiful, bounding baby boy. And there's days that we're like super upset with him because he's crazy. But every
just
time
wanted to make a dramatic entrance.
Totally.
Actually, the thought that went through my mind was he was determined to get here.
Yeah.
There were no obstacles that were going to block him from getting here. He was going to get here one way or another. It was going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. So the whole time we didn't know it, she had a weak cord. And it wasn't even wrapped around his neck or anything. It just, at the last moment, gave out.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. To me, that's intentionality on his part. I mean, you guys also had your intentions going too, but to me, that's him saying, nothing is going to stop me. You can kill off all of my birth stuff. You can do. I'm coming through. You better be ready. I mean, that's what it says to me.
I had a death doula. I was right around this same time we lost my stepfather, and I was talking with her about this, and she said that he made the choice to be here.
I believe it.
Yeah. And I think something that you said is really profound. I want to connect the two dots. You were talking earlier about, the more that you can hear the sorrow song, the more that you can hear the happy song. So it makes perfect sense why in that moment of your greatest despair, you were cracked open, because the balance shifted. You felt more despair probably than you had in your entire life. Mm-hmm. And then on the other side of it is more joy than you.
It's crazy. So talk about tears streaming down my face. And I just went into a room that no one was in, and I just prayed, and I just said, thank you. And, talking about signs, we get back to the house. When they wheeled Katie away and they handed me the scrubs, I went to prayer, and I prayed to God, and then I prayed to all our guardian angels and any ancestor. I'm like, anyone who's out there, like, we need you right now. And we get home and this cardinal is dancing in the yard, just jumping up and down in circles over and over and over as we're walking through the door with this baby boy. And I'm like, and I've never seen a cardinal dance in our yard before. I've never seen a cardinal dance anywhere before, now and after. And I'm like, that's interesting. So I'm like, I don't know which of our ancestors or guardian angels this is, but thank you for your help today.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Wow.
do you have an impression of who it might have been? Because likely your first impression is probably it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know. So Katie did. She had an impression that was her grandfather Gordon.
Okay.
And I'm like, sweet. Thank you, Grandpa Gordon. I'll find out. There'll be a day that I'll find out. I'll be in the afterlife and I'll be like, oh, Gordon, I don't know you, but thank you. Probably I do know him, right?
Yeah.
I probably do know him from long ago, but
Yeah, right. I actually had not an experience like yours, but I had a bird experience it was within a year after my father passed. And his passing was not traumatic for me. Leading up to the passing was more traumatic because of what he went through. But after his passing, I was actually in a good space. But there was also a piece of me that was kind of missing him, because that's normal for when you have an experience like that. One day I'm out mowing the lawn, and the property we were on at that point it was 1 acre and one of these big old riding mowers, right? So really loud, really raucous, noisy, all that kind of thing. And as I'm coming up to the side of the house, there's a mourning dove perched on not on a bush or on a tree, on the ground in front of the tractor. Now, bear in mind, this is really loud. It's making a ton of noise, and he's not going anywhere. He's just kind of looking at me, and I'm thinking, are you okay? And he stayed that way for the longest time. I mowed well around him just in case he kind of went in front of me. He went through I went through like 3 different passes while he just stayed there watching me. And I realized that was my dad. That was my first impression. And the reason I knew it was my dad is one of the things I associated with my dad was mowing the lawn.
right.
It was one of the big things in his life. That was my dad checking in, saying, "Hey, okay, glad to see you're doing the lawn, looking good."
Let me watch you, so you're doing it right.
Right. Because I like you never saw. I'm sure you had never seen a cardinal dancing like that. I'd never seen a mourning dove sitting on the ground. It was on gravel too, while this mower is going by within like 3 feet of
gravel. Like that's not a comfortable place for
Not
a
at
mourning
all.
dove to
No.
sit.
He was just kind of looking like, "Hello."
It's so cool. Yeah, and that's and of course you were missing your dad, and it probably brought you a lot of comfort to know that he was watching out for you.
Yeah, it was fun. Well, I'll tell you what the thing that actually did make the biggest difference for me was a couple months after his passing. I was kind of wishing, I wish I could have one more time to talk to him, and I got my wish. I got an opportunity to do in dream state a dream meeting that was clearly a lot more than just a dream. Where there was physical touch, you could feel each other, all that kind of stuff going on. And I don't really, to this day, I'm not really sure where we were. We seemed to be on a side of a hill in a college town, but I have no idea where that could have been. But the rest of it was we were just chatting about everything. I was telling him what was going on in my life. I mean, it was just this really great conversation.
Yeah, and that's law of attraction, right? So
Yeah,
you had a strong desire to have that meeting, and you got it.
Exactly.
It's awesome.
And it was all I needed, because after that, I was fine. No big deal.
Yeah.
So this is what I do now. I help people stop feeling bad as best as I can, and then help them decide to start choosing to feel better. Because we kind of talked. I think the law of attraction can lead to an insatiable desire that leaves you actually feeling empty if used in the wrong way.
Whatever you give your focus to.
So if I heard somebody say this. I can't remember who it was. They're like, Hitler used the law of attraction.
Well, yeah.
He decided to attract an army and genocide, and he was very successful at it. He was very powerful in manifesting the world the way he wanted it to. Doesn't mean that it was a good world.
No.
And so the law of attraction is a law that we can use for bad or good. And I think we can use it for bad or good in our own life. Not, of course, Hitler was using it for mass destruction of other people's lives, but I think we can use destruction in our own life. So one of the things that I'm always wanting to do is to check and see if the goals I want to manifest are actually good for me. How do you guys discern if what you're trying to manifest is something that you should even be trying for?
Cool. It's a good question.
I know my answer if you want me to go first.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
It's really, really simple as far as I'm concerned. Whatever that idea is, how do I feel about it? If it feels good to me, I know it's right. If it doesn't feel good to me, stay away. And do I do that? Hell no. I have this long history of going after those negatives. But the simple fact is, if I break it down to how am I feeling, I know whether or not it's good for me because I feel good whenever I'm focused on it, whenever I think about it.
Yeah. For me, it's the feeling. Does it feel good? Does it feel fulfilling? Like it's going to add to my life. And also, does it fit with the, I guess, hope, dream, whatever that I have for my life? So the first picture that comes to mind is not even mine, but it is yours, Matt, of that, 60-year-old plate that you get on your anniversary. If that is the overall arching, goal of my life, my overall arching goal of my life is to be happy and to be connected to my family and to create and foster these memories. So is it in alignment with that? And then there's obviously like smaller goals that I have, like we want to build a house. So there's certain things that we want to do in alignment with that. So like just kind of checking, does it fit into where I said I wanted to go? And where I said I wanted to go, do I still want to go there?
Yeah. This is exactly how I do it as well. Both of you are I think that we were given a guide, and it is our heart.
Yeah.
So if I'm wondering if something is good for me or not, I'll just hold it in mind and then do as Walt was saying and see, how does this feel in my heart? Is there a little bit of discord? Because we can manifest anything. I really believe that we can manifest anything. And so I was going after really big, aggressive business goals, and I was manifesting them. So I started a real estate sales company, and we grew from 6 million in annual sales to 20 million to 50 million to 100 million to 200 million to 300 million to 400 million. And I just continued to just set a bigger goal. I was like, all right, grow, bigger goal, manifest, right? And I would write it every day. And so I was writing, we sell 500 million, right? This is what was happening. And, but I wasn't checking to see if this was something that was good for me or not. And we were awarded like the number 6 fastest growing company in the state of South Carolina. Wow. And there's 470,000 companies in South Carolina. We were like, wow. This is how powerful of creators we can be if we put our mind to something. But there was a tremendous amount of discord in this goal and what was actually good for me. And I wasn't listening because I had blinders on of growth at all costs. Yeah. And I wasn't checking. And so what ended up happening was massive disaster. So I kind of think this is the way it'll work too. If it's the universe or God, for me, it's God. I think that you get these little whispers like, hey, maybe you should check what you're doing right now and adjust course. And then if you don't listen, then he starts to shout like, hey, I told you. And so I was like, a lawsuit happened. And then like a faction of people left and then started a rival company, and it was really hurtful. And then we ended up getting contractors started to take advantage of us, but everything was so big, it was beyond me, right? And then everything ends up like crashing, and we've got $4 million in debt on really terrible loans, and in like 13 half-finished houses that we were trying to like rehab and flip, and we were losing $100,000 a month. And my wife looks at me with just tears in her eyes, and she said, where are we going to live? They're going to take our house, and we've got 4 kids. Like, this was recent. And I'm like, oh man, that was when my goal wasn't in alignment with my heart. And so that's kind of like following an ego goal, and you know, which obviously Hitler wasn't checking in with his heart when he was killing millions of people. It didn't feel good.
But it's really easy to get into that space. Again, I go back to like society and whatever, like we've been taught to idolize people in Hollywood, people who have a lot of money and they have the boat and they go traveling all the time, and this lifestyle or this perceived lifestyle that they have of they're so happy, and I need my life to look like that to be happy. And then you just chase that perception, and I've gotten lost in it, and I think it's a difficult thing to step away from, because maybe for me anyway, I guess I can only speak for me, the circles around me didn't understand, because I've always been the person that like when I decide, it's over, like see ya. I just go and I just do what I want to do. I just decide. I'm German and Ukrainian, so very stubborn. And so I just do that. And I remember these pivotal moments. Actually, for me, it was after the loss of a baby. And I was like, that's it. My life is going to be different. Like the dreams that I am chasing, I am not fulfilled by being number one in this brokerage or getting a trophy. Like they mean nothing to me. They are plastic and they are glass, and I win them and it's wonderful. And then it's like 10 seconds later, it's over. It's over. It's not where I'm supposed to be going. And I need to change that. But I still find, even to myself today, like as I continue to follow my heart in different ways, that I get caught up with that ego perspective of like, oh, well, you really should be doing this so that you can like build a house faster, or you can do this, or like nobody's going to understand why you just want to live in the middle of nowhere and grow vegetables and not talk to anybody.
Well, here you are, though, lighting up the world with the Law of Attraction Today podcast and making this huge difference. So you are following your heart.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, that I do. I just like after that experience, though, I'm like, I need to check on these goals more often. I need to do what I ask you, like how you check on them. I need to hold these things I'm trying to manifest in my mind and then see how I feel doing it. I bet if I had held that 500 million in my mind and checked on it, it wouldn't have been something exciting to me.
No.
It probably would have been like, yeah, all right, fine. But nothing like, I wouldn't have been super passionate about it. And so all that stuff happened, and I'm like, well, you know what is on my heart? I'm like, I really want to teach people how to feel happy. So I started the Good Mood Revolution podcast, and of course made a bunch of changes in business, and let everything just be a lot smaller and a lot more enjoyable with people I actually wanted to spend time with, and rather than having to prove how good I was to the world, and just letting everything be the way that it is. And then I've got this like big passion on doing the podcast. And I'm like, all right, well, now everything's really harmonious.
One of my favorite themes that we often talk about here on the program ties in directly to what you were just saying. And the way it ties in is you decided to take this horrible situation that you found yourself in and respond differently. And that becomes the key point. It isn't so much that stuff happens. It isn't so much that we attract things that we don't like. Yeah, I mean, guess what? We're pushing air in and out. As long as we're doing that, there are going to be times we're going to attract stuff we didn't want to attract. Deal with that. The more important question is, how are you going to respond when they happen? And you chose to respond in a way that actually fed into who you really are, your authentic self, as it's often called, your inner being. I don't care what you call it. Doesn't matter what label you give to it. You decided to feed into that. You decided that was going to be your response. And that's the key point. That's much more important than why you did it or how you ended up here or whatever. It's how are you choosing to respond now?
Then you get to look at these things that at the moment felt really, really terrible and say, oh, I'm so glad that happened.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's the other piece of it. That's the flip side of the response. That's the other side of that same coin.
Like,
Because
oh, I'm so glad that all of
yeah.
that came crashing down.
Yeah.
Because if it hadn't, I would still be chasing 600 million or 7, or who knows, right? I would have just continued to be lost in manifesting bigger and bigger and bigger numbers. And again, at what cost? You know, Jodie Lynn, I really loved your answer that your overarching goal is these relationships in your life. And me too. Like I've come to 2 big conclusions about what I stand for. And it is relationships, 1, and then continued growth, 2.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things to do, and it has become so particularly over the last 5-7 years, something like that, has been regular check-ins so that I can keep making that decision about what's my next response, no matter what it is, good, bad, indifferent. I don't care what the situation is. And I've had lots of opportunities to practice it. I mean, the most traumatic one by far, a year and a half ago, my ex-wife left me after a 23-year marriage. And it was devastating. So I was faced instantly with that question. Okay, well, how are you going to respond to this? And I can't say it was easy, but I have great friends. A lot of them are involved here in the podcast. I connected with every single one of them. One of the nice things about doing a podcast like this, like a ton of life coaches, a ton of therapists, a ton of psychologists, all the best help you could possibly get in the world. And that's what I did. I called on the best help that I could possibly get in the world, and they helped me through it. But more importantly, I also took the opportunity to see how quickly can I choose my next response. I can't necessarily feel great yet. I still have some stuff I'm going to have to go through. There's going to be all this pain that I'll go through and all that kind of thing. But how quickly can I start making my response? And I'm really proud to say I made that decision to pick my new response within a day.
Holy moly.
I didn't implement it that quickly.
Dang. That's crazy.
Well, that's what happens when you have so much support, though. That's why these connections are so important, because the connections.
But Walt, I just want to honor you. Like, I mean, obviously that's a very difficult situation for anyone to traverse, but you decided you wanted to have a high quality of life, even as you navigated one of life's challenges, which, because that I do think that's the key to lasting happiness, as you had mentioned. And I agree. Challenges never stop. They don't, we wait for this time when everything's just going to be perfect. It doesn't. You're either coming out of a major challenge in one right now, or you're heading toward one.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I also have to be very honest. I really didn't have much of a choice. It was a very clear-cut choice. It was a choice between change my response or continue this deep dive into the worst depression I'd ever experienced in my life.
Well,
That was
yeah.
the
Well,
only.
if you give me
there was no
those two
third option.
options,
That was it. That was it. That's one or the other. So
if
it
you
was
give me those
actually
two
a
options,
fairly
I'll
easy
skip the
choice to
depression.
make.
Yeah, I'll skip the depression.
No,
Yeah,
and I didn't skip the depression. Don't get me wrong on that. I did not.
Yeah.
I still had to go through all that. I still had experience. I had to go. I
Yeah,
had to grow
mourning.
through all of that. I had to go through everything, but I did it so much quicker because I made the decision.
You have to mourn the change.
You do.
And you have to mourn the change, the loss of the loss of a lot. Like there's so many things, like just how you made your bed and what you had for dinner and all these things. Like everything was a change.
Everything changed. Everything.
And but I just heard this quote from my buddy Matt Micheletti the other day. He said, "A loss is only a loss so long as you believe it is."
That's true. Yeah.
And he's like, you are free to reframe any loss into a gain. What you're learning, what your opportunities are, because there's always, this is another thing that was in Think and Grow Rich. He said, in every adversity, there's a silver lining, a seed of opportunity. And he talked about his deaf son, son that was born without ears and who couldn't hear. And he's like, I just knew he was born without ears, but there was an opportunity here for him. That was, you said you had a hard time understanding the law of attraction when you first saw The Secret. I had a hard time understanding that chapter of Think and Grow Rich. I'm like, how? I knew what he was saying, that his son was born without ears and that was a gain for him, but I didn't. I'm like, no, I think he'd rather have been born with ears.
Yeah.
And yet that's the lesson I'm still learning now to this day, is that we just kind of talked about it, right? That experience of my business coming crashing down around me was like a really big gain, because it was an awesome change of now I have a home office. I'm doing homework with the kids. I'm like shooting baskets with them in the yard. When I was chasing 500 million, I was working so much I didn't see my family that much.
Wow. Yeah.
So what a gain.
Yeah.
What a
right.
gain.
And so Walt, what have been, I know it's only been a year and a half, it's still kind of fresh, but what have been some of the gains in your life since the change?
I don't know that I could list them all, but
wow, that many.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. When you go through any kind of traumatic event, you grow. I don't care whether you choose to make the kind of choice I made, you still grow. I don't care if you go into the deepest dark depression spiral, you still grow. It's inevitable. You can't avoid growing to some degree. You may even end your own life, but up to that point, you were still doing some growing.
Oh, and even after, I think you grow.
Oh, well, that we start getting metaphysical at that point, but I tend to agree with you. I don't think the growth ever stops.
I don't think it ever stops. No. I've thought about this a lot, that we are just growing, evolving beings. Yeah. I'm like, why would we stop growing and evolving just because we don't have this body? That doesn't make any sense. It just kind of seems like that's just our path here, is to continue to grow and evolve. I think we'd look back and be like, oh, I shouldn't have ended that life. That wasn't a great choice. We'll make a better choice next time. Anyway, I'm sorry.
That's all right. That's funny though. That actually got me laughing.
Well, it's really, I know for us it seems so serious.
Oh yeah,
it does. And I of course don't want anyone to waste an opportunity of a life. But I think it's extremely sad if anyone takes their life. But I just think it's a lesson, is all. I do think you review it and you're like, oh, okay. Because I also think time, isn't past, present, and future are a little bit more connected than we think that they are. I think that when you don't have this body and you're in the afterlife, you could see what the future will look like. And they could have seen, oh man, I was so bummed out at that point, but it was going to get so bright if I had stuck through it.
I want to keep going because I have a feeling we had like 3 or 4 hours worth of conversation we could continue with here, but I look at the clock and I say, oh, we got an hour.
Oh, I've enjoyed it. You two are the best to talk with. You guys are awesome.
We should probably draw to a
Yeah.
close, but there are a couple things that we do habitually here that we got to make sure that we do. One of them is something that I discovered a couple years ago. Um, I kind of stumbled on it one day when I was closing off a show. I'd had a guest on like you, and we'd had this really great conversation, and I was kind of contemplating as I was talking all the different things that this guest had told us about that she had been doing in her life and contributions she made and so forth. And she was talking about how she was posting to her blog and sharing all this stuff. And that's when it kind of snuck into the back of my brain and became conscious. I realized that we as humans tend to forget that there are so many people who've learned how to give. And so they give every way they can. They do podcasts, they blog, they post on social media, they talk with friends, they share, they do all this kind of stuff without getting credit for it. And that was the part that snapped in my head. I said, wait a minute, we should be giving credit for that. So since that point, I made a point to say, on behalf of those people you've never met, Matt, you've never seen, you never will meet, you never will see, who have been consuming your content, listening to your podcast, reading the stuff that you've been writing, sharing the stuff that you've been sharing, on their behalf, thank you for what you've been doing, because you're making a difference in this world.
Aw, that's sweet to hear. And back at you, of course, but thank you. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, we do just kind of give and give and give.
Yeah.
And just feel like that's our job, to just give. But I think about it a lot. When someone reaches out and says, I put your podcast on when I drive my kids to school because I want to help them be happier, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so much bigger than I can even imagine.
Yeah. Yeah, we get that feedback every once in a while. We may not hear from most, but we hear from some.
Yeah. And
Right.
then it's like, oh, this is super cool. The ripples of positivity are infinite through generations.
I've said it numerous times, but I remember this is my 12th year doing the podcast. I remember like the first couple of years and knowing that I was doing it for myself, my co-host, and not much else because there was nobody going to be listening. And then the very first time I got an email from a listener, the first thought that went through my head was, I have listeners?
Somebody's listening. Oh my God.
What have I been saying? Oh no.
Well, and that's the other thing. And thank you for the acknowledgement. But like you and me and Jodie Lynn, we get so much from doing this. Mm-hmm. I would have never had this conversation with you two. Mm-hmm. And what a powerful, amazing friendship we've had in an hour.
Right.
Mm-hmm. If we didn't do this, like the gift is really ours that we get to do this.
I totally agree.
Absolutely.
Totally agree. Yeah. In fact, when we're done here, I'll tell you about something I'm working on that actually feeds that idea.
Cool.
Yeah, really good stuff. Now, there's one other thing that we do around here. Well, there's two other things we do actually that need to be done. The first is we haven't really told people where to find your podcast. I mean, I presume you find it everywhere, but let's reiterate for them the name of the podcast and like, is there a website where they find out how to contact you? How, give us all that good stuff.
Yeah, it's Good Mood Revolution, and it's on Apple and Spotify and all those podcast apps. And it was, we've got the website is going to be out at the next 2 weeks. It's just my name, mattoneil.com. So
right.
we're launching a rebrand where we're branding me as a thought leader rather than just the show.
Very cool.
Cool.
I love that. Okay. So now we're down to the last thing we need to do. And Jodie Lynn knows where I'm going with this one. Because I have 3 co-hosts that I do the show with. Jodie Lynn's one.
I saw that.
Yeah, and Emery Young. And each one of them has this amazing ability to take whatever we've been talking about, no matter how deep into a rabbit hole we go, and find a way to tie it all together. And I really think Jodie Lynn's the best of the 3. The other 2 are really amazing at it, but I think Jodie Lynn actually is the best of them. But Jodie Lynn, you've been thinking about it, I'm sure, because you know what's coming at the end of every episode. How do you tie this one together?
Oh gosh, all the pressure. It's been a long time since we talked about law of attraction on its face. And sometimes law of attraction can be so surface, just be happy, just be positive. But today we really dove in to all of the things from action to really feeling your feelings. And it's a reminder for everybody that's listening today. And thank you for this reminder, Matt, of the blessings of possibilities. The world is full of infinite possibilities and anything is possible for our lives. It's a reminder that, there may be a dark time that we encounter that is the human experience. We're going to, but we have the choice. We have the ability to choose to see the good in it, to move forward from it. And last of all, and I think most important of all, allow ourselves to be guided by the heart, to be checked in to what our heart is calling us to. And I think that's truly what we're meant to experience in this lifetime. So thank you for that reminder.
That was awesome.
Did I oversell it? I mean, really, she's good at this.
I'm like, oh man, I'm getting emotional just listening to you say what we just talked about.
Thank you.
I mean, I don't know how you top what you just did. I mean, that's just, oh God.
Put that in a Hallmark card.
Right? Actually, Hallmark isn't good enough for it. We need something better.
We should just have sound bites for the end. I'm positive somebody has clipped those sound bites and taken them and used them. They should. Matt, you should.
Well, it's such an honor to have the chance to talk with you guys. I loved every minute of it. Thank you so much.
We loved having you too. So thank you very much. Thank you to all we have people listening on the live stream. So thank you to live stream listeners. And thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We will see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.